Federal government condemns recent gruesome murder of policemen.
Nigeria Center for Disease Control scales up genomic sequencing of COVID-19 cases in recent weeks.
The federal government restates commitment to completion of Ogoni cleanup.
My goal is to actually ensure that the cleanup project is owned by the Ogonis and that more indigenous people acquire the required skills.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss attacks on correctional facilities.
All right, now for some time now, the correctional facilities in parts of the country have been the target of attack by unknown gunmen.
You're right, Claire. Now, this year alone, we have had at least 4 different attacks on the nation's correctional centers. These were at Owerri, Kaba, Oyo, and the latest, of course, on the medium security custodial center in Jos, and that incident took place on Sunday evening.
Indeed, and in that Jos attack, the gunmen were said to have stormed the correctional center in large numbers with sophisticated weapons and engaged the armed squad in gun battle before breaking into the facility.
Now, the gunmen were said to have been trapped inside the yard when personnel from sister security organizations swiftly mobilized to assist the armed squad to cordon off the custodian center.
But reports indicate that police recaptured 10 of the inmates that escaped, while an attacker and 9 others, including an armed squad, died in the incident.
Now, the Chief Security Officer of Plateau State, that is Excellency Governor Simon Lalong, and other stakeholders have condemned the attack on the Jos Correctional Facility, describing it as one too many in terms of the assault on the correctional services system in the country.
And we may also recall that the leadership of the correctional service puts the personnel on red alert prior to their latest attack in Jos.
Well, as a way of protecting the custodian centers from attacks, the federal government inaugurated a vulnerability audit of all the centers in the country with a charge to members to identify fault lines in the security setup and penetration levels of the custodial centers.
And the Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola, says it is sacrilegious for anyone to breach any custodial facility, as it amounts to challenging the sovereignty of Nigeria.
But why do gunmen target correctional facilities? Correctional facilities were formerly known as prisons, by the way. And could the overcrowding of the prisons be partly responsible? Or is it lack of quick dispensation of justice? And how should the Nigerian Correctional Service help in averting these attacks? It's Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I thank you for tuning in, for that's our topic this morning.
I am Claire Dilabu Abdul Razak. Welcome to you as well to the program, and it's live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, the NTA. As usual, we have the usual complimentary segments, of course, online today. But first, let's take the news highlights from our colleague, Tessie Omeri.
Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Nigeria. And here is the morning news. Federal government has strongly condemned the recent gruesome murder of 2 policemen, warning that those who carried out the killings, videotaped their heinous act and circulated such will be apprehended and brought to justice. In a statement from Office of the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed described the horrific, barbaric and cannibalistic manner of the incident as unacceptable attack against the state. The minister said the 3 victims were all serving officers of the Nigerian police who were abducted by members of the Eastern Security Network ESN, acting on the instructions of their leader, Chinonso Okafo, aka Temple, on 27th November 2021. The leader of the ESN team that killed 2 officers is one known as Gentle. The minister said the continued attacks on security agents as well as agencies of government by ESN IPOB are diametrically opposed to the call in certain quarters for a political solution to the IPOB issue, and wondered why those making such calls have yet to condemn the appalling murder of 7 police officers. A businesswoman heading to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia for Umrah Lesser Hajj has been arrested by operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency (NDLEA) at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, for ingesting 80 pallets of cocaine. The 46-year-old suspect was arrested on Wednesday, 24th November, at the boarding screening area of the airport during an outward clearance of Qatar Airways flight and was subsequently taken into custody. Another suspected trafficker was arrested with 101 wraps of heroin weighing 1.3 kilograms at Gate C Departure Hall of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Ikeja, Lagos, on his way to Italy via Istanbul on Turkish Airlines. The drugs were concealed inside cassava flour, popularly called gari. Meanwhile, an abandoned consignment of weighing 17.90 kg was discovered at the narco shed of the airport. The civil service is the very tip of the spear of government, and optimal public service delivery requires an efficient public service. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo said this when he inaugurated a secretariat complex in Asaba, built by the Delta State government and named after Professor Chike Edozien, the traditional ruler of Asaba.
Through a system of voice and data networks, there are 9 seminar and conference rooms, a training room, a well-furnished clinic.
President of the Senate Ahmad Ibrahim Lawan has inaugurated a 120 beds capacity mother and child health care hospital at his country home Gashua in Yobe North Senatorial District. The multi-million naira project was executed by the Office of the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Sustainable Development Goals.
Or even 30 of these across the country, including Benue State. So it's all over the country, and what bothers Mr. President and his administration is to save the women of Nigeria, to save the children of Nigeria, to save Nigerians, provide good health facilities, and by the grace of God, before he leaves in 2023, Nigeria would have seen all the goodies.
And still talking health, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control has scaled up genomic sequencing of COVID-19 cases in recent weeks, following Canada's announcement that it detected the new Omicron variant in 2 persons with travel history to Nigeria. Chairman of the Presidential Steering Committee on COVID-19, Boss Mustafa, at the national briefing says Nigerians must be extra cautious in observing all known pharmaceutical measures and quickly get vaccinated. Meanwhile, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control has confirmed 21 new cases of COVID-19 in some states of the Federation. The states are Lagos with 6 new cases, Cross River recorded 5, Abia 3, while Bauchi and Kaduna states have 1 new infection each. Nigeria has 214,113 confirmed cases of COVID-19, out of which 207,292 were treated and discharged, while 2,966 died of the virus. The Minister of State Environment, Sharon Ekazo, says the federal government will prioritize the Center of Excellence for Environmental Restoration effective 2022 as part of implementation of the Ogoni cleanup exercise. This is in addition to successfully remediate polluted sites in Ogoni land.
The Ogoni people who are his people wants that university, so that our people will be highly educated and will be more highly educated.
My goal is to actually ensure that the cleanup project is owned by the Ogonis and that more indigenous people acquire the required skills.
If you apply these same our Ogoni youths in that project, automatically they are
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Claire after this break.
The housing solution we have developed is a multifaceted one. First, we have tried to lead a program to build what we think will be an acceptable and hopefully affordable housing type based on surveys we did in 2015-2016 and construction that started in 2017. And that's going on in 34 states as the National Housing Program.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
He's falling sick so frequently, either fever or stomachache. I keep him away from junk food.
She also feeds me apples. She says an apple a day keeps...
If you want to keep germs away, then also wash your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Meaning?
Germs and disease spread through the hand also. For this, use Dettol soap. Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
Hey there, what's on your bucket list? Would you like to travel the world, live your best life? What if I told you you could blow right this minute and do everything on that list? Airtel is saying thank you to all loyal customers. You stand a chance to win up to 100 million naira with guaranteed cash tokens in the Airtel Recharge and Blow promo. How awesome is that? All you have to do is recharge to win. For more information, dial *444*4# to enter for the draw. Everyone's a winner, so hurry now. The more you recharge, the more you win.
Airtel, the smartphone network. Give your kids winning energy. Milo Active Go. With the goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa, helps them make the most of every day. Milo, the energy to go further.
Everybody knows the secret to good cooking is that special ingredients. The mothers know. Ladies and gentlemen, food is ready.
Good food for the body. Yum yum for the
Erisco Richico and Najiko tomato paste is made by Erisco Foods Limited, feeding Africans with healthy foods.
All right, let's give you some business news and tips now. And intra-African trade is said to have generated 42.1 billion United States dollars in trade and investments, of course, among African nations. Comfort Amodo will give us all the details.
The investments were as a result of trade-related deals between buyers and sellers from more than 55 African countries in KwaZulu-Natal, Durban, South Africa. The Intra-African Trade Fair Advisory Council attributes the feat to additional data submitted by trade promotion agencies of Algeria, Nigeria and South Africa in the intra-African trade in Durban.
Already the negotiations are going on, so that people can trade with each other. And, trade can go, digitally as well. It doesn't always need human beings to cross. But at least we have a good start. There is political enthusiasm to promote intra-African trade and investments.
To this end, Nigeria is renewing its efforts to sustain supply to global markets with strategic measures to build capacity, with the setting up of the domestic export warehouse to tackle logistics challenges of non-oil exports.
With the due stamp on a vehicle, that vehicle is not supposed to be arrested or delayed by any security agent. They'll go straight to the ports for export. Because once there's an export contract, and the buyer out there or the importer out there is waiting for goods, and those goods cannot be delivered as at when due, there's a problem. So it's affecting our economy, it's affecting our nation, and it's affecting the image of our nation. So due is a key project that we have to continue.
The Executive Director and CEO, Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Dr. Ezra Yakusak, during an interface with industry players at the export house, affirms that the domestic export warehouse will increase the global market share for Nigerian exportable products. With Business News, Comfort Amodu.
Thank you very much, Comfort Amodu, for the business package. Next for us is Newspaper Review.
All right, time to welcome Bayo Atoyebe, who is already in the house with us to do his usual. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Kinsley.
I hope you see my colors.
Yes. There's yellow there. I've noted. Thank you.
Go ahead. Okay, Kinsley, you want me to start?
Yes, please. Keep up with the nation.
All right, let's start with the nation, and quite a busy page. But the main story, as expected, Omicron COVID-19 variant, Nigeria on the alert, says government. Omicron COVID-19 variant, Nigeria on the alert, says government. Now, result of samples sequencing expected today, and entry points on the watch. Reviewed travel guidelines begin Friday. Okay, so let's go above the nameplate. Officer, 9 others killed in custodial center attack. Details of that on page 3. 252 inmates missing. Now, APC chair slot not zoned to North Central, says party. Details on page 28. And World Bank hails Kogi over 2020 audited financial report. Now, North elders Ohaneze clash over Nnamdi Kanu. And let's look at the picture story, which I presume will be all over the papers today. Some security personnel at the Medium Security Custodial Center in Jos, which was on Sunday attacked by gunmen. Kingsley, I think that's enough.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the leadership front page below the name flag. 30 billion naira duty, that's the kicker. We are yet to give directive to ground private jets. That's according to NCAA and NAMA. COVID-19 vaccination mandate for federal workers begins. COVID-19 vaccination mandate for federal workers begins. You have details on page 4, and there are other stories also captured by the following writers. As 3 Nigerian travelers detected with Omicron variant in Canada and Hong Kong. Continue to observe COVID-19 protocols, NCDC tells Nigerians. We're looking for answers. That's according to the WHO. And President Buhari commissions Vandekia Obudu Kato Ranch Road. That's the photograph you see there on the front page, the commissioning of the road. President Buhari commissions Vandekia Obudu Kato Ranch Road. Bandits profiling. Not all Fulani are terrorists. That's according to Northern Elders. Messi beats Ronaldo Lewandowski to win 7th Ballon d'Or award. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey quits to allow growth. Can we see those photographs, those stories on the front page? Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey quits to allow growth. Jos prison attack, 9 bodies recovered, 552 inmates escape, 9 captured. 9 bodies recovered, 252 inmates escape, 9 recaptured. APC denies zoning chairmanship to North Central. Bayo.
Thank you, Kinsley. Let's start with the story on the update on Jos Correctional Center. A clear picture is beginning to emerge now of the invasion of criminal gunmen who invaded the Jos Medium Security Correctional Center. The Commissioner of Police, Bartholomew Onyeka, upon receiving information, ordered a cordon off of the center and ordered a stop and search operation. This led to the arrest of 9 inmates and 1 other inmate surrendering himself to the police. So far, 252 of the inmates are said to be at large. Fatalities were also recorded. Information from the custodial center indicate that 8 inmates who joined the attacking criminals were also shot down while trying to flee. 1 member of the custodial center staff was also unfortunately killed. The rest office and the superintendent's office at the custodial center were destroyed. The gate was badly damaged, and that's how the criminals got access into it. A head count of the security custodial center indicates that they have 1,060 inmates. 500 of them are convicted, 560 are awaiting trial. There have been some reactions about the pronouncement by Minister of State, Labor and Employment, Mr. Festus Kayamo, in his capacity as inner member of the chamber on the law of Lagos State NSTAS panel. Another senior advocate of Nigeria, Ebun Adugborua, says that the judicial panel were instituted at the behest of the National Economic Council, a federal government organ, and the army and the police all appeared before the panel. Dr. Remi Olatumbora, also senior advocate of Nigeria, said the panel setup is under the Lagos State Commission of Inquiry law, and it vests such powers on the governor to set up inquiry for fact-finding when an extraordinary thing occurs. Under that law, he says, no immunity is granted to anyone. Criminal law, either at state or federal level, does not grant immunity to soldiers and policemen. An official of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mr. Monde Ubani, also says that panels set up by various states to inquire into the allegation of human rights violation by the personnel of the Nigerian police force are constitutional. It may be recalled that a chief legal officer of the Nigerian police force had actually instituted a suit challenging the legality of the NSAS panel. It may also be recalled that he was reprimanded and the suit was withdrawn.
Okay,
Omicron is the latest baby on the world now that is giving the world concern.
Yes,
the Nigerian Center for Disease Control says that there is no case of Omicron variant of COVID-19 in Nigeria. This is contained in the statement by the DG Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Mr. Ifedayo Adetifa. The Omicron variant was first identified from testing done on 9th of November in Botswana, and it was said to have been found from travelers from West Africa. It was reported to the World Health Organization, and identification of cases among young, unvaccinated people in the southern African countries. Omicron variant so far has not been detected in Nigeria. A number of cases have now been reported in United Kingdom, Israel, Botswana, Hong Kong. Canada has reported 2 cases, and interestingly, Canada is claiming that the 2 cases were from individuals who recently returned from Nigeria. But the Nigeria Center for Disease Control says so far there is no case of Omicron in Nigeria. Other countries that have cases of Omicron are Germany, Belgium, Italy. So far, a total of 126 genomes of Omicron has been identified globally. The interesting thing about Omicron variant is that it is considered highly transmissible and may present increased risk of reinfection as compared to the other variants. The NCDC urges Nigerians to ensure strict adherence to public and health social measures. Meanwhile, the Federal Ministry of Health and NCDC are monitoring this new variant to ensure that Nigeria is safe for them. SARS-CoV-2, otherwise known as COVID-19, broke out in 2019. So far, there have been several variants of it, and they are identified by the Greek alphabet. We have had the Alpha variant, the Delta variant, the Gamma variant, the Delta variant, and now we have the Omicron variant.
Mm. Okay, Kingsley, have anything to say? I want to talk about the lady who was apprehended for trafficking of drugs, the Saudi-bound woman, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because of the reason she gave, for her actions. She said she wanted to raise money to for in vitro fertilization, that's the IVF treatment, due to pressure from people because she's been married for 28 years without a child due to fertility challenges. She was previously engaged in, apparently second-hand clothing or trade in clothing, and then she met a fellow woman during her Umrah who advised her to, go into drug trafficking, and she had to save up to 1 million naira, to buy the drugs in pieces, and then another 1 million naira to get her visa renewed. I mean, this is the kind of pressure, women
as
get,
sympathetic as
and we must address it.
There is no justification for the wrong. Sadly, several others have been caught too. There's somebody who said his mother was sick and required surgery, and therefore he needed money. That is why he indulged those ones. You will have sympathy for such cases, but desperation should not push one to go into such criminal illegality. Unfortunately, they were caught. We are lucky that these days they are being caught. Who knows how many of them have slipped through the net and have gone? And they are earning the nation a very bad name. For instance, if this one had been caught in Saudi Arabia, pressure would have been on Nigeria that Nigeria has been caught and he's on the death row, and there will be pressure that we should do something about rescuing Nigeria. Several Nigerians are on the death row in Malaysia, where the law is very merciless when it comes to drugs. So the earlier our people know that trafficking in drugs is a death sentence, apart from the social consequences it has on people and desist from it. And no circumstances will seem to justify it.
My question again is, if she was able to raise, sorry, I got to pick my papers, if she was able to raise 1 million naira or two or so,
to buy drugs.
To buy drugs.
How much does it cost IVF?
Exactly. That's the question.
Well, the question is, how do you verify her claim?
See, that's the perspective of the lawyer.
Anyway, well, we also need to be careful about this Omicron COVID-19 thing. It's so scary. While the federal government is saying there is no variant yet, but we are still expecting the sequencing samples results to come out.
Yes. Well, to be fair, even President Cyril Ramaphosa has even condemned the Western world for barring travelers from Southern Africa into their country. And our own professor of virology, Oyewale Tomori, says that racism has nothing to do with it. He says that pressure should be put on Botswana to identify the diplomat who brought that Omicron into Botswana. If it's identified, they will know the country of origin and will be able to tackle it.
Well, that is true. The only perspective of, you might say, of racism is that what has happened in terms of the reactions from the Western world is to say, look, punish South Africa for detecting this variant and announcing to the global community that there is a new variant. The fact that it has been detected doesn't necessarily mean that its source of origin was from South Africa. Just as you have said now, Botswana and South Africa were the instances where the variant, surfaced. And if there was a carrier, it's like Nigeria. I mean, who brought coronavirus to Nigeria? It was an Italian. Yes. Who brought Ebola to Nigeria? It was a Liberian. It was a Liberian.
Sorry.
So what is all when they said, look, supply vaccines to the rest of the world, there were all kinds of issues around vaccine nationalism. Oh, it was as if allowed the poor people to die, leave them. But rich countries had the surplusage of vaccines supplies. Elsewhere around the world, particularly in developing countries, on the African continent, what is the percentage of the population that has been vaccinated? Get the vaccines around. No, it was as if, no. But some scientists have argued that assuming they had ramped up the vaccination numbers on the African continent, perhaps these mutations that we are seeing might have been contained. Yes, of course, we have seen variants and so on and so forth elsewhere around the world. But the truth is that Africa is not the source of coronavirus. And I know that it is the duty and right of countries to seek to protect themselves and their citizens, but it is not to stigmatize Africa and say, oh, you are the latest source of this variant that is so highly infectious and can be a killer and so on and so forth. A number of us, of course, have been vaccinated, taking the double jabs. If there is a third one, as advised by the experts, it will also be available. Some, is it for 3.4 or 4.3 million Nigerians have been vaccinated already, fully vaccinated, and it's still ongoing. But of course, one has to be careful even after vaccination.
And the consequence of vaccine nationalism is becoming a boomerang now. In most Western world, where they have excess of vaccine, they now find out that if you are not careful, the vaccine will expire on their counter.
Absolutely.
Exactly, and that reminds us, Bayo, that the COVID-19 federal government's mandate on COVID-19 for federal workers will take off, I think, tomorrow, which is 1st of December.
Yes.
Take off 1st of December.
For federal civil servants.
And
also the federal civil service are all now, officers of level 12 below are now to resume fully.
That's right.
There's another development in Kaduna State. Kaduna State is to begin a transition to what is been described as a 4-day working week. The statement was given by the special advisor to the media on communication, Mr. Muyiwa Adekeye. He says, with effect from Wednesday, that is tomorrow, December 1st, all public servants, other than those in schools and health facilities, are to work from home on Fridays. The whole idea, they say, is an interim work arrangement that will subsist until government is ready to move to the next stage of transition to a 4-day working week. And they say that these are the lessons they have learned from the restriction from COVID-19. They found out that a lot of work can be done virtually by personnel. And so they are trying to provide facilities for civil servants so that every Friday they will work from home. But they will now have a 4-day working week. It says that it gives more time for civil servants to rest and work and also indulge in agriculture to boost food production.
Well, that's a mega topic for discussion. I'm sure there will be issues to interrogate with regard to this. Just a reminder that the key issues in work is actually productivity.
Yes.
Productivity. That's the key issue that is there in work. And if you're already excluding some categories, teachers and health workers, so is it only the civil servants?
Those are essential workers.
Yes. Is it only the civil servants? Yeah. Of course, you will not include media workers. You will not include media workers do 24/7.
24/7.
Now you are saying teachers should also come to class on Fridays. How many hours do you work in a day?
They have even changed the working hours.
8 to 5.
From 8 to 5.
Yeah, but how many hours? Actually, the working average is 40 hours a week. That's to say 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday. That's the working week. Now, 8 to 5 doesn't approximate that because it gives you 9 hours in a day. 9 hours in a day.
Times 4 days a week.
Times 4 days, that is 36. So you still have 4 hours short of that. But what is your productivity at the time you are at work? What is your productivity? So somebody works now 4 days a week, person will be entitled to full pay, person will be entitled to pension after 35 years in service or 60 years of age.
Kingsley,
some of the countries that we try to imitate, when you go to work, you put in the required number of hours of work.
You're not allowed to take calls. Your breaks are strictly observed. Anyway, by
you go to our offices. By the time it is 3 o'clock, staff are already jumping out of their offices, only to go and board the staff bus. 3, and they will not arrive at 8. Anyway, sorry, before we leave, 2 stories. Let me just draw attention to this. Inside, it's business stories. Price hike pushes cement firms to 356.2 billion naira profits. The paper is reporting that 3 firms producing cement and are quoted on the stock exchange have made profits of 356.2 billion naira in the first 9 months of this year. A bag of cement is selling for between 3,800 and 4,000 naira.
A year ago, it was just under 1,800.
Precisely. So we have self-sufficiency in cement. Look at the price. What is the imported input into cement production? We have almost self-sufficiency in rice production. Look at the price of a bag of rice. These are the kind of things that we do that hurt us. The profits are pouring in for the companies, but those who use cement, of course, are crying because it raises the cost of production of structures and so on and so forth. Last one, Bayo, if you don't mind. This story on the front page, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey quits to allow growth. This is way to be a chieftaincy stool. If you found a company, you don't go until death comes.
Okay, I think that does it for us for today.
Yellow card should be for.
No, it should be.
Okay, both of you. All right, let's go on a short break. We'll be right back.
It's another season of Carols.
Radio Nigeria, NTA, and Voice of Nigeria invite you to their annual service of 9 lessons and carols.
Theme: Peace, be still.
Come and enjoy the ministrations of Radio Nigeria, NTA, Voice of Nigeria, and other choirs.
The message will be given by the Most Reverend Dr. Ignatius Kaigama, Archbishop, Catholic Archdiocese of Abuja.
And lessons will be read by notable Nigerians.
Chairman, Mr. Boss Mustafa, Secretary to the Government of the Federation.
Special guest of honor, His Excellency Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Chief host, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, Minister of Information and Culture.
Host, Directors General of FRCN, NTA, and Voice of Nigeria.
Date, 5th of December 2021.
Venue, National Christian Center, Abuja.
Time, 3 p.m. prompt.
The program will be broadcast live on Radio Nigeria, NTA, and Voice of Nigeria,
including live streaming on Facebook.
For advert placement, call Rate on 0803 451 2261, Lillian on 0803 314 4383, or Bibiana on 0909 965 1270.
All COVID-19 protocols will be duly observed.
Radio Nigeria, NTA, and Voice of Nigeria Service of 9 Lessons and Carols 2021.
Supported by Vivid Sounds. Come, let's celebrate the newborn king.
The NOA, for example, has succeeded a great deal in sensitization during the pandemic, and we have found the community mobilization officers most effective in the sensitization and in the advocacy campaigns, creating awareness on the coronavirus pandemic. We have done this through the production of jingles, which were very widely distributed in different languages, in English, in Hausa, in Yoruba, in Igbo, in Tiv, in Igala, in Kanuri, in Fulfulde, in Ijo, in Isoko, in Bini. In talk of any other language you can think of, we had translated sensitization messages.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
He's falling sick so frequently, either fever or stomachache. I keep him away from junk food.
She also feeds me apples. She says an apple a day keeps...
If you want to keep germs away, then also wash your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Meaning?
Germs and disease spread through the hand also. For this, use Dettol soap. Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
If you've just joined in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And our focus this morning is on attacks on correctional centers across the country. And I'm sure we all know what happened on Sunday evening when the Jos Correctional Center was attacked by unknown gunmen. Of course, that has raised a number of questions on the vulnerability of our custodial facilities across the country. And in the last 10 months, we are told 4 custodial centers have been attacked by gunmen. Let's take this background report put together by our correspondent Yemi Ajayi first to serve as our lever for our discussion.
September 12, 2020, the Medium Security Custodial Center in Kaba, Kogi State, was attacked with a number of inmates of the facility freed. On October 19, the same year, Edo State experienced something similar as 2 correctional facilities in Oko and Benin correctional centers in the states were also attacked. A massive 1,993 inmates were freed. Ondo State was not left out as hoodlums broke into the facility at Okitipupa, releasing 58 inmates and leaving vehicles burnt, while some officials were injured. There was also an attempt to break into the Ikoyi Correctional Center in Lagos the same day. On Sunday, 28th November 2021, news broke that there had been another attack by armed men who broke into the facility in Jos, the 4th custodial facility to be breached in 2012. In 2021, one of the gunmen, a personnel of the Nigerian Correctional Service Armed Squad, and 9 inmates lost their lives in the attack.
Number of the inmates at large now, 252. The number recaptured, 12 now. Now we are having 789. And the police and the DSS, they assisted us, and they are still assisting us. And even our men, we are on searching party to recapture some of these escaped inmates.
Available statistics indicate that about 4,365 inmates escaped from jailbreaks in 5 years, from June 24, 2016 to September 12, 2021, out of which only about 949 were recaptured or returned voluntarily. The resurgence of attacks on correctional facility has been blamed on congestion of the correctional facilities in the country, where over 70% of inmates are said to be on a waiting trial list. Experts have echoed the need for more security in the facilities around the country, aside the quick dispensation of justice in the country.
When you see many of the facilities that you see people running away, they are, or breaking the facility, is usually facilities that have high number of persons who have not been determined whether they are guilty or not. In other words, those you classify as awaiting trial. The facilities are overstretched. So the other facilities, whether it be accommodation, whether it be sanitary, whether it be food, everything is stretched. The second issue is what facilities, how are we fortifying the facilities that we have designated as custodial or correctional centers?
What more needs to be done to ensure an end to the recurrence of jailbreaks in the country? This is one basic question. Guests already seated will be providing answers to shortly. Thank you very much, Yemi Ajayi, for that background. Now, to discuss this subject matter, we have guests with us here in the studios as well as at our other network centers. With us in Abuja, let's welcome Mahmoud Yusuf. He's a legal practitioner and programs manager at Network of University Legal Aid Institutions. Mr. Mahmoud Yusuf, pleasure to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Also here with us is Ruth Olofin. Olofin is acting executive director of Claim Foundation. Pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Olofin.
Good morning.
Yes.
And joining us from our Kaduna studio is former Chief Judge of the FCT, Justice Ishaq Bello. He is also the Chairman, Presidential Committee on Corrections Reforms and Decongestion. Justice Bello, thank you very much for joining us. Also from our Jos studio, we have been joined by Dr. Guleng Daskes. and he's a criminologist and lecturer, Department of Sociology, University of Jos. Dr. Daskes, thank you very much for joining us on the program.
All right, it looks like we're having some audio issues there from the two network centers, but if those issues have been cleared up, we would just like to start the conversation from our guests, who are outside, especially from the Jos Network Center, where Dr. Daskes is. All right, Dr. Gulen Daskes, thank you once again for being our guest this morning. Now, we understand that you had, of course, done some study on the correctional facilities or prisons as we used to know them in and around Jos area. And now this being the latest of the attacks that we have witnessed on prison facilities around the country, could you just indicate to our viewers what happened and what might have gone wrong? Still hanging up. Let's come back to our studios here and then get to speak to the acting executive director of Clean Foundation, Ms. Ruth Olofin. Ms. Ruth Olofin, this is an incident that we've witnessed, let's say, almost every quarter of the year. We've had 4 of them, and usually fatalities, and of course, destruction of a government facility. What is happening to our correctional facilities that make them so vulnerable?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. It's interesting that these attacks are beginning to happen in quick succession. And like you rightly noted, about 4 has been recorded. And in the month of October, we recorded 2 already. What it means is that this is a concern, that we need to begin to address. On the face of it, you need to address this look at it from 2 angles, the external angle and also the internal issues. If we take it from the angle of the internal issues, the well-known issues that we've always known, that our correctional facilities are sort of inadequate. The holding capacity is very, very low. For instance, we're also told that the facility in Oyo State, for instance, the capacity is for 160 inmates, but currently houses about 800. That of Port Harcourt is supposed to house 800 and is currently housing about 4,000. So clearly, the space is very limited. And then there are other issues in terms of when you move around these correctional facilities, you will see that some of these facilities are old structures. And then the security, equipment or architecture around those facilities are a bit outdated. One of the things you need to see how you can evolve with the times, because if you're continually having people being pumped into those facilities, you need to also upgrade the system and upgrade the security architecture that you have. That is a bit on the internal side. We can come back to it. Externally, again, and very critically, is the issue of the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Again, because you see that I was just telling my colleague now that these are becoming coordinated, and then you have external influence coming in. So gunmen attacking, bandits or whatever attacking this facility. It means that there's access, to small arms freely flowing, and people can just pick these arms and just go and attack, this facility. And you need to also look at the quality of the arms and ammunition that the prison guards are having. If you are faced with superior ammunition coming from outside, tendency is that, yes, lives will be lost, you are going to bow to pressure. So these are some of the systematic issues that you need to take on board. Look at it from an external point of view. And try to also understand who are these people that are doing this from the external side. I think I'll cap it at that and come back.
Okay, let's bring Mahmoud Yusuf. From what she had said, if you look at 3-pronged areas, the frequency of attacks on our correctional centers, and then you look at the sophistication of the weapons used, and then you also look at the the coordination, with which these attacks are carried out. What are you reading? Are we dealing with widening security issues?
Okay, as she rightly pointed out, you look at it from the angle of the internal and the external factors. First, you mentioned about the sophistication, the kind of sophistication around the weapons that they're bringing about. Yes, we have issues around kidnapping, banditry, and what have you prevalent now, which is as a result of the proliferation of small arms and ammunition. Most of the time, I would look at it from the perspective of an access to justice perspective, to the fact that these people that are being kept in custody are there not on their own volition. So what are the reasons behind them being there? So you see people who are charged with capital offenses, treason, you see people charged with kidnapping, murder, and they're there for 15 years. Most of them have not gone to court. So these centers that are built to house convicts, in most cases you see, given the example of Jos, you have it has a capacity of between, I think, 400 to 500, but it houses about 1,060 or above currently, and most of the inmates there are awaiting trial. So the coordination comes from the fact that you have people who you have syndicates, you have people who are connected to these people, maybe, and they are outside. So it's born out of some frustration, and then also the fact that the system is built against them, these awaiting trial persons. So I believe if a person is convicted and rightly put into custody, they would not have this issue of agitation. And you mentioned one other, the last.
Yes, I talked about the coordination. I talked about the frequency, and I talked about the sophistication of weapons used. And I'd like us to look at it from the external first, because the inmates are inside, of course, secluded. The attacks are coming from the outside. And what we are saying is, what is the pull for these attacks? Is it a security situation, or is it a desire to free inmates, or what? I don't know.
Well, to your point, it's also linked to the security situation, where you have issues around banditry and kidnapping. These are all prevalent issues, and like I said, it boils down to access to justice issues, where you just round up people and you incarcerate them. I'll give example, the recent, recently, a few days ago, in the High Court in Akwa Ibom discharged about 14 detainees who were awaiting trial for treason for 15 years. They were kept in custody, and they were discharged because there was no evidence to support a conviction. So these are all systematic issues that, it's like I said, it frustrates people. Then the coordination comes around. We know that crime is not done in isolation. You usually have groups, like the kidnappings we have. You have the kingpins, and they have the sophistry with which they have the weapons they use. Then also you mentioned the issue of security. Yes, security is a major issue, where you have the free flow of arms, small arms and ammunition. Everybody can go anywhere and get this thing. So it's a major thing that needs to be looked into.
All right, thank you very much, Mahmoud Yusuf, for your initial points. Let's go over to our Kaduna Network Center now. Now, we understand that the lines have been cleared up, and so we bring in His Lordship, Honorable Justice Ishaq Bello. That's the former Chief Judge of the Federal Capital Territory and Chairman of the Presidential Committee on correctional reforms and decongestion. My Lord Honorable Justice, of course, you've listened to our background report and the comments made by the other guests. Quite aside from the attacks that we have had on prison facilities this year, we know that there are reports from time to time of jailbreaks, fairly common last year as well during the NSAS protest. Do these incidents speak to the mandate of your committee? And how do you respond to these numerous unsavory reports coming out of the correctional services facilities?
So much, Mr. Kingsley. I'm really surprised that this curiosity has been delayed for quite some time, because the issue of jailbreak has been on, and it's quite an embarrassment to the nation. I would say that all these things raised are really directly in consonance with the mandate of the Presidential Committee on Decongestion or Reforms of the Correctional Service Centers in the country. The committee was inaugurated on the 30th of July 2017, and between that time and now, we visited over 39 correctional service centers and jail delivery of over 12,000 inmates, that is within the adult incarceration centers, and with the juvenile correctional centers, over 150-something discharged for various reasons, which perhaps times may allow for me to allude. Now, I agree with the issue of congestion relatively. When I say relatively here is respect of the type of offenses. If you take, for instance, the issue of kidnap, many people, including the victims or the relations of the victims, hardly would want to go to court to give evidence. Because if you have 10 people in the court at the gallery, you can be rest assured 5 are members of the suspects. And without insulative provisions, what I'm saying, facilities, to insulate the witnesses from identification as it obtains in developed climes, many people shy away from coming to court, even to assert their own rights in that regard. So a judge can go into a court 100 times, the witnesses may not be there because of fear of identification and being harassed, chased, and perhaps killed. Even the judges hardly have any insulation towards such vulnerability. So to that extent, yes, you can find congestion in respect of such offenses. I remember even in the case of murder, which I handled before I left. Over 15 years, I was on that matter to the level of boredom. No judge likes to stay over a matter for a long period of time. He wants to move. The assassination of Harry Marshall. Nobody came. At the end of the day, the matter had to be thrown out on grounds of no case submission. The prosecution did not even oppose. Now that is that aspect. And another element that brings in congestion is unprosecutable cases. You know you don't have evidence, but you would rather use the court as scapegoat. You keep on adjourning until such a time when they just said enough is enough. Meanwhile, the human rights activists are pressing on the judge to track out the matter at early stage, but because of exhibition of judicial maturity, he keeps on restraining until such a time he strikes it out. And the moment he strikes it out, the media will carry, oh, the police are doing their best to cleanse the society of crimes, the judiciary is messing up, striking and throwing out such cases. Now coming back to the issue of jailbreak. There are so many issues that we found. We made situational assessment and made reports for necessary action, but those that are concerned have failed, and in itself is a factor to generating this kind of thing. Condemned prisoners, those who are on death row, abound across this country. in various correctional service centers. We have graphically categorized these condemned prisoners state by state as a committee. What is the purpose? If Mr. A is convicted perhaps in Kaduna State and sentenced to death, for some reasons, the correctional service centers decided to move him to Jos. In the course of our journeying, we meet those kind of persons. We list them for Kaduna State Executive to attend, or Kano, or Oyo State, or Lagos State, so that it will make it easy for them to see at a glance those that are meant for them to take necessary action. I can tell you, the failure on the part of the governors, I have said it severally, and to some few of them directly, has been making it permissible for more crimes to be committed in Nigeria. Because those outside make reference to those inside, saying, after all, nothing is going to happen. And with time, they will start applying for commutal to life imprisonment, and for many other reasons. Sometimes they succeed. And these outside who are their foot soldiers are seen. They continue to commit crimes, they educate their own children, they maintain their own families, and when it comes to getting people that will ignite the problem so that they can release people from prison, it's an easy thing for them. And I can tell you too, authoritatively, communication between one correctional center to another among inmates is much more effective than between you and me. If you know the number of handsets that are there within the various correctional centers, you'll be shocked. It is quite a problem. It's very, very embarrassing. And some of these condemned prisoners have become institutions even within. They can dictate the pace of what is happening. And the target is for them to find a way out. Even if the officers, who I always sympathize, looking at the kind of facilities they have, even to defend themselves, do their best to make sure that they cordon the area of the condemned ones. And you find only the awaiting trial, in most cases, escaping. But there are a few condemned ones that also manage to escape. And when you have some high-profile individuals spread, located at various places, they know this. That is why you have these simultaneous occurrences of jailbreak, because they know where some of these persons are located, and they will organize, and effectively so, to launch their attack. So, strangely enough, because the headship of various states do not like to act in this manner, they had this kind of conspiracy at the Senate and the National Assembly where they made a provision in the new Correctional Service Act that where a governor neglects, refuses, or declines to endorse warrant for execution of a condemned prisoner, a judge, the chief judge of the state can reduce to life imprisonment the condemned sentence, which fortifies a statement made to me by one of the chief executives as we are going around, that as far as is concerned, the power to sign warrant for execution should be resided in the court, meaning the court now is doing its job, trial, conviction, sentencing, and then sign warrant for execution. Now that has been achieved through a legislative act of the National Assembly. This, to me, is an outright abandonment of constitutional responsibility. And that is all about checks and balances. That is why the chief executives were conferred with the constitutional...
Justice Bello, thank you. Let's just put you on hold for a moment and get the perspective of Dr. Dasquez, who is a criminologist and lecturer joining us from our studio in Jos. Dr. Dasquez, I'm not really getting the nexus between congestion and the frequency of these attacks, because the attacks are not coming from the inside, but rather from without. And again, if you look at the fact that, I mean, we've had prison congestion, has been with us for a long time. We've never had this kind of attacks, jailbreaks and all that. It's only beginning, it's only happening, you know, of recent. Now, we have been told that you've done a research on the situation in Jos. So let's use that as a test case and find out if there are other reasons why our correctional centers are target of attack.
All right. Thank you very much. I was actually trying to respond before the network went off when I was asked about how it happened. Incidentally, it happened on Sunday around 5:20, 5:30 p.m. And of course, it was actually something that seemed to be a coordinated attack by gunmen who came from outside, like you rightly pointed out. And for me, I think that it is not an attack that just happened within that day, but it's actually a product of some kind of prolonged study of the security situation in the facility. Some 2 months ago, there was actually an incident that happened where 4 inmates escaped. And I thought that that would have been some kind of early warning for the prison or the correctional facility to be proactive in ensuring that inmates who come in there are secured, and of course the facility itself is secured. But with this incident that happened, it clearly shows that there are a lot of other things that correctional facilities and of course authorities need to do to avert and ensure that the facilities are indeed protected. You know, discussants have actually talked about the fact that the prisons are overcrowded. But I think beyond that, like you said, this is an external attack, and we cannot rule out the possibility of the interest that criminal networks outside have concerning some of their gang members that have been in the prison. And the most important thing is that these inmates that are in the facilities are actually not completely free from the communication they have with their criminal gangs outside. The judge actually mentioned the fact that when they went around prisons, they discovered that inmates have phones. And what do they do with these cell phones? They actually establish, connection with the gangs they have had before they came into the prison. And the communication actually goes on. And most times, you discover that even issues that have to do, key critical security issues, are communicated to these gangs outside, and that would have actually facilitated some of these attacks that go on within the prison. So that is indeed very, very important. And of course, it calls for issues of intelligence that is supposed to be at the forefront, even when it comes to safeguarding our correctional facilities. What is the extent to which intelligence is actually used in determining the category of inmates that we bring in? What is the database of the inmates that we bring in? And apart from the database, what are the kind of offenses they have committed? And these offenses would have actually helped in ensuring that more security, is intensified in these facilities that we have. Unfortunately, the database may be there, but we don't take advantage of that. And again, there is one thing that is very common with us, and that thing is the idea that once inmates come into correctional facility, they are there of course, to serve punishment. But besides, serving punishment, majority, including the staff, believe that these are criminals, and therefore they don't need to, be close to them. But again, coming back to the intelligence that I talked about, it is when you relate with these inmates that you get intelligent information. And I think that, we shouldn't shy away from the fact that, yes, they must have committed offenses, but at a point in time, they were normal human beings before they came into these facilities. And so, when we establish some kind of close relationship with them, we can get information from these inmates, including the communication they establish, with their criminal gangs outside that would have warranted this kind of attacks.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Daskes, for that view. I'm just tempted to, let's return back to the studios here. Ruth Olofin of Clint, earlier you set up the foundation for your comments describing the internal and external factors that account for this. But are we also now seeing the audacity of criminal gangs to liberate their kind, who are behind bars, as it were? And from the security architecture, how well are we prepared, to fend off these assaults?
Thank you very much. So I think basically we are still seeing these as isolated cases. If you look at this from the security point of view, most of these crimes are coordinated, they are organized. And if you begin to look at it from that perspective, you begin to plan towards it. I think that the point that we are now, we haven't taken that recognition into our security planning, that the correctional facilities or the agencies have to step up the game. Because if you look at it, that this is becoming frequent and there's some kind of external influence, how do you also guard yourself? Such that, Doctor made allusion to the need for intelligence gathering. That has been is so weak, both within the level of the correctional, the judiciary, and also the police. How do you get intelligence? These attacks don't just happen just on their own. There must have been discussions, and it's amazing that inmates already have, cell phones, so there are communications that are ongoing. And again, it brings me to the discussion I had when I started this thing, that you have to also look at the internal factors. How did these inmates get those handsets within the facility? So is there some kind of collusion on the part of our correctional officers? Are they facilitating it? So we need to ask questions. Who are those people manning those guards? Is there a kind of political economy to this, such that if you know you're going to bring in contrabands, handsets, I'm also going to get a cut from it? So I think it's to unpack all of these issues and begin to dig deeper. What is bringing all of this? If you securitize, the jailbreaks that you're having, tendency is that the states or the government is going to step up its game in terms of trying to ensure that we man these facilities adequately. And again, this contributes to a much larger discussion in terms of the state of insecurity in Nigeria. We have been talking about kidnapping, armed banditry, insurgency, and all of that. But my analysis is that this needs to come back to the discussion. It needs to be contributed to the entire discussion in terms of how we are handling internal security. Again, jailbreaks are not crimes that happen in isolation. There has to be a connection to it. If you make that connection, you're better placed, to respond, to the issues. I think that we're still trying to see these jailbreaks as isolated cases, and as such are not paying the needed attention that we need to pay to those form or preventing such attacks. And then going forward, how do we, reform the criminal justice system? A lot has been said, and I'll pick it up from where my colleague from NULAI talked about the access.
Sorry, before you take that criminal justice system, the issue of phone, has triggered a question, and I'd like you to help me answer it. Where do we draw a line between a convict's political right and security?
that is quite a difficult one. I think that right now, those who are in those facilities do not have the right to go in with such handsets. We should prioritize the security first. Rather, they are not right. You're not supposed to have. So there's a violation somewhere. At this point, we should be looking at the security of the country and also of the citizens, because if these persons come out, and that is again the fear, some of them are hardened criminals. If they come out into the society, it's also going to put a lot of pressure on what is already happening in country in terms of internal security challenges. So I think that the issue of phones should not be discussed here. Rather, we should be looking at what are those issues happening within those centers that are facilitating inmates having access to bring in cell phones into those facilities. It should be about security and for me, not about having access to phones. Yeah. And again, looking at this, if you're going to have access to phone, I think that there are designated phones within those facilities that they can have, and at stipulated times. And those discussions have to be monitored. That is the sense that we get. So it's not as if you just come into the prisons and then you already have your phone. It means that there are no control measures to track the discussions that you're having. Yeah.
And then how do you get money to recharge for your credit? So who says that to
you?
I
just unpack it. There's quite a lot happening.
Yes.
Some kind of illicit business that are happening within the system themselves.
That's why I would like us to take advantage one more time of the presence of the former Chief Judge of the Federal Capital Territory, who chairs the Presidential Committee. My Lord Honorable Justice, our Nigerian prisons were wrong against the background of the issues that are being ventilated right now, access to otherwise contraband items and so on and so forth. And from what you have done in terms of your visitation and all that, what have you found the most worrying about the state of our prisons or correctional centers as they are now so called?
There's a lot seen and very worrisome, but I can assure you that a lot of things are also being done to correct, and a lot of things have been corrected. This issue of phone is a very important factor in terms of the stability of the Correctional Service Center. I mean, the nation. Recently, we have seen how state governors ensure that services by all these media houses, or whatever you call them, the NTA, NTA, Glo, and many other things, communication were destabilized in order to block communication between informants and bandits. Now, if you have this kind of communication within the correctional service centers, you can know that they will always relate to their members outside. And that is, to me, very, very appalling and disturbing. And unless something is done, this jailbreak will continue. I can tell you that when I said at my opening remarks that some of these condemned prisoners have become institutions, I know what I'm saying. And I believe, talking to people that are enlightened, you understand there are certain things you don't say publicly. But I can tell you that they have become institutions. Sometimes they can dictate what they want to be done. That is compromising the system or the institution. And a lot needs to be done in that direction, very radically, to address that. We know as a fact that some of the delays in the disposal of cases are also connected to a deficit in infrastructure regarding the correctional service centers. Because if you, as a judge or magistrate, wants to sit and then there is no vehicle to convey a suspect to your court, there's nothing you can do but to adjourn the matter. This is a factor that we must understand. It's a collective responsibility. I know not quite long the Minister of Interior did purchase vehicles and then also directed advisedly that all chief executives should do the needfuls in terms of condemned prisoners, meaning admitting by implication the chaos, the tension they cause within. Many a times when we get into some of the correctional service centers, knowing that they are condemned prisoners, they will raise hell until we are able to address them, to pacify them, to cool down, before we can even conduct the sessions that led us there. So you can understand that it is a very terrible thing. That is why I've been hammering about these condemned prisoners. If you do that, one, you strengthen the law, the potency of the law, because those outside will see that, yes, it is not business as usual, leaving people to be lying there for ages, even after they have exhausted their right of appeal from Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. The law would be made more meaningful because they have seen the implementation of the law. But after exhaustion of appeal, where a convict requires, he's left there, he's not supposed to be there for 1 day after he has exhausted his appeal and the verdict has been affirmed by the courts. There is no why or any reason that person should be left. But the passive attitude is rendering the potency of the law to become less efficacious in the society and in turn promoting criminality. So this is very, very important. On the part of the the Presidential Committee, we have made a lot of recommendations, and we know, and happily so, that the presidency has always accepted and endorsed our recommendations. Let me say this. We looked at those that were able to read from O level up to doctorate within the prisons before their terminal date. And we asked the question, and I know the number of times I had read legislators as to what will happen to their credentials at the end of the day to address recidivism. And luckily, it was assented that those that were able to acquire learning, once they are out, the Controller General, as by law, is empowered to recommend amnesty for them, so that when they are filling any form, the column there, wherever convicted, is meaningless to them. It's not applicable to them. They are as clean as a newly born baby. And those that could not acquire learning, we made the advocacy, and it's within the law, as provided. Those who are able to acquire skills in terms of carpentry, other trades, they are also entitled to such, to remedy recidivism. It was idleness that was leading them into crime. Now they are given the opportunity to be reintegrated into the society and feel free to work anywhere like any other person. Now, these areas are very, very fundamental and crucial in terms of reducing the population in the prison and then relapsing back into crime. Our only concern now is how people will understand the need to even volunteer information when there is need to testify against any person standing trial. Because it's not for the Correctional Service Center to gather information or intelligence information alone. They cannot do it alone. Because if the prosecution has not completed its investigation, the hostile cases are there, which are just in custody. And when there is attack, it is at their own domain. Let me quickly talk about the lack of understanding the nexus between what I earlier said and the external attack. You have had people hiding themselves and in a way raising alarm that they were kidnapped. Is that an external factor? It was engineered from within. Even if somebody made the alarm, he was just doing it in sequence, consequential to what he was told by that person who had hidden himself and said he was kidnapped, just for him to conspire and get fund to share with the person that will tell the story. Now, what I was saying is that a lot of these things are engineered by those condemned prisoners from within. And the attack, of course, has to be from outside. But the ignition point is within. And I hope my sister over there will now see the nexus from what I had said earlier on regarding external factor. And the earlier something is done on this, I have seen this thing face to face. I went around and I saw the dastardly situation there, and that's why I'm hammering on this. It's an ignition point. It has to be addressed, and then many things will fall in place.
I really do agree with you that there is need to decongest the prisons. Of course, if the prisons are decongested, those on death row for quite a long time, either, given their punishment or set free, and we have greater room, there wouldn't be the attraction for the external forces to go to attack the prison, because you will have nobody there to attack. I agree with you. There's need to decongest. But maybe in the course of our program, we will look at, the impact of decongesting our prisons and how it will affect, the security. Let me come to Mahmoud and back to the incident that happened in Jos on Sunday. And the story coming out from Jos is that the attackers came in large numbers. And the scenario, the picture that runs in my head is, okay, if they were attacked in large numbers and there were other sister, military formations around the correctional center, so they all came, in one swoop or in different directions. They had sophisticated weapons. Were those weapons concealed in what were? And they swooped straight to the, to the gates of the correctional center. And our correctional officers were there. Were they sleeping? Does that not speak to the alertness and intelligence and preparedness of even our correctional centers to be able to detect if these people came in large numbers, walked towards you with guns? I mean, you should. I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't have much to say, but I'll give perspective to that because the story is still evolving. We don't really know what actually happened and how they actually got there. And I'll say again, and I'll align to what Dr. Gulen said. This appears to be a coordinated attack, and lending voice to the fact that it is not something that those people outside, it's people that have an idea about what the security situation is. So if you go to the custodial centers, for instance, you find out that you just see about 2 or 3 armed personnel, except of course for Kuje, where I know they have a military presence, a heavy military presence there. So that speaks to the fact that we really need to look at the security situation. The Jos prisons is located in a, I would say, a heavily secure area, so because you have the police command, you have a police barrack just adjacent to that. So we can't say how these people got there, but it speaks to the preparedness of the custodial centers. So if you have this number of inmates, about over 1,000 inmates, and it's a maximum security center, and you have just about three armed squad personnel, you definitely know that if attackers come and they have superior powers, because that's the story that has been going on. They came with superior powers, sophisticated weapons, and then compared to what the custodial centers have, not shying from the fact that yes, there's institutional problems that needs to be addressed with the staffing of the staffing and the training of this correctional. So it's not enough for you to give a correctional officer a gun and say, guard this very massive facility. It has to be something that we look at it from the institutional perspective, look at it from the training perspective, and see how, like most of the panelists have said, this is something that is coming from within. How because if we thoroughly investigate, we'll see there's connivance from some of the, it's unfortunate and regrettable, but there is connivance from people within. Yes, from people within. Mostly from people who come visiting and they case the area and see, oh, this person is doing this at this time, this person is doing this at this time, or when they go for their court appearances, because that is also an opportunity for them to interact with their accomplices who are outside and at large. So we really need to look at the security, not just with the correctional facilities, but the security architecture and the security arrangement as a whole. the state governments get, you don't know what they get as security votes. These things are security issues. What are they doing to support these institutions? So this is a conversation that should not just be focused on the corrections, but expanded to other security agencies. Thankfully, when they made the when they made the plea, when they made a distress call, you had other sister agency come to support them, and they were able to contain the situation. But by then, the damage has already been done. Yeah.
All right, Mahmoud Yusuf, thank you very much there for your views. Lady and gentlemen, we're going to have to take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
That is the black swan of the century, has actually hit the whole world very hard, even the strongest of economies, and Nigeria was not spared. But due to the proactive stance and steps that the president has taken, we've been able to come out quickly. The president has consistently said we must invest in infrastructure, even as we're investing in human capital, that we must invest in infrastructure, because at the end of the day, that is what will bring about a sustainable economic growth. So the president has given us our directive. He has said you must make sure you pay salaries and pay pensions, but you also make sure that the critical projects of roads, railway, airports, bridges, major infrastructure that are meant to drive the growth of the economy, that we consistently invest in them, even if we have to continue to borrow to do so.
This message is from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
We are all Nigerians. Against all odds, we shall and must remain united. We may have our challenges, our problems, and setbacks. However, together we shall overcome them all. What doesn't break us shall make us stronger. This is the mindset that shall bring peace, progress, and prosperity to our beloved country. Do not let tribal and religious sentiments govern how you think, act, or feel. Don't be influenced by those who want to destroy our precious national unity. Everybody who is a Nigerian is your brother and your sister. This is the mindset of the new Nigeria. It is also the mindset that we must all adopt. Let us support each other in creating the Nigeria of our dreams. This message is from the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
Welcome back, and you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have all our four guests in Kaduna, Jos, and two here with us in the Abuja studios. Let's return to Jos, Dr. Guleng Gaskes. Let's take a look at one or two issues that have been raised. One, what do we know at this time about the attackers, some of whom were earlier reported to have been trapped within the prisons? Are they now amongst the escapees? That's one. And two, from your general study, why does it appear that sister security agencies still largely operate as silos? In other words, each one is different. I mean, if there was prior intelligence, operationable or actionable intelligence, then the prison officers should have been on a higher alert. And once gunshots were already sounding at that time of day, of course, you would expect others with their antenna to be up to say, look, where is this sound coming from? And so on and so forth. But these things appear to have just gone, like what happened in Owerri some time ago, if you recall, police facility damaged, government house nearby, and all kinds of things, prison facility also damaged. From your study, what is the missing link in trying to connect the sister security agencies and getting them to act in unison with regard to law enforcement?
Thank you very much. I think the story is still evolving, and the issues that are raised are such that until it is fully established, it will be difficult to know gunmen, those that escaped, and those that were trapped within. But of course, the information is that some were actually trapped inside because they went in the moment they used superior power to break the gate. Some went in to open all the cells within the prison, of course, to set free the inmates. And it was actually at that point that reinforcement came, of course, making it impossible for those that were already inside to escape. But the fact is that, like it is said, these gunmen came, you know, of course, in their numbers, in vehicles, and of course, at the point they got to the gate, they used whatever means to break the gate. Of course, it could be either explosive device, because knowing how the gate is, it's of course heavily fortified. But for them to have actually destroyed the gate and let loose the inmates, it actually means that they came with an explosive device. So those that were outside apparently, you know, escaped. I mean the attackers. But those that went in were actually trapped. But at the moment, we have not actually established the number of people or the number of gunmen that were trapped in the prison, and of course those that eventually surrendered. Then, of course, you know, coming to your question, it's actually still mind-boggling that Just Prison or Just Correctional, you know, Service Center is one of the supposedly safest, you know, facilities around, because by the site is the police headquarters, and of course there is also another, I think, command just opposite the headquarters, and by the side too is the DSS, you know, office. So it's actually mind-boggling that these attackers could come and succeed in breaking into, you know, the facility as the case may be. So the problem lies there with the lack of synergy that exists between these security agencies. I think an alarm mechanism or an alarm framework that is supposed to be set on ground to alert all these, you know, agencies surrounding the facility is lacking. And that is one critical thing that I think security agencies should actually work towards addressing. Yeah, you are police, but I think that any security threat also affects your work. Yes, you are DSS, which is charged with the responsibility of basically gathering intelligence, and of course issues relating to information that are critical to threats like that. And so I think that the synergy that is supposed to be seen to manifest in the work these agencies do is actually lacking. And that explains why these attackers were successful in breaking into the facility. But thankfully, if not for the intervention of these forces, especially, I forgot to even mention the fact that some few yards, you know, to the prison is the special task force, which is Operation Safe Haven. I think it's their own intervention that actually helped in addressing this. But majorly, like you said, there is no proper coordination and synergy between these security agencies to respond to emerging threats of this nature, you know, particularly with what happened in Just Correctional Facility. And I think that sincerely, the audacity, like I said earlier, you know, these people must have planned this for a very long time. When you are entering the prison, the correctional facility, it's just one entry point, and there's no exit point. The only exit point is for you to either go to the prison barracks, you go to the police barracks, or you even go to the DSS, you know, office, which is also blocked. So it's just one entry point and one exit point. I'm very sure that even the inmates that escape must have littered around, the quarters of either the police or the prisons for some time before they eventually escape. So there's a major lapse in the security agencies to coordinate their response to threats, especially of this nature. And it is all linked to the issue of the failure of intelligence. It could be that intelligence may have been provided, but responding to this intelligence promptly is also part of what makes the attack on the facility successful. Even though I would say that it's not fully successful, because considering the capacity is just about 250 something that eventually escaped. But again, I think it's a pointer to the fact that our security agencies need to re-strategize and collaborate and synergize on how to respond to threats, whether they are, threats that have been there over time or threats that are spontaneous.
That's good. Thank you. And I like the word you chose, audacity. It was the audacity of the attackers to have gone into that area and gone out. I wouldn't say with little force of resistance, but again, we heard just this morning from the head of the Correctional Center in Jos that the identity of the attackers are cattle rustlers. And I'm wondering, how plausible is that? Are cattle being, reared in the prison yard, or what is it? Do you have any idea?
I think my response to this is that it could be possible that some rustlers have been arrested and, of course, taken to the prison, if it is true that the attackers are cattle rustlers. It could be that some of their members have been arrested and, of course, taken to the prison, and they must have gotten information that they are, being, of course, housed in that facility. And that could be the explanation, for that. But again, another information that we got is, like somebody mentioned, issues of visitation, of course, is actually within the rights of the inmates to receive, visits from their relations. But again, what is the extent to which those who come for visit are subjected to serious security scrutiny before they are allowed in? One of the narrations, which of course I'm not very sure has been established, is the fact that some of them came in the name of visiting. While, they come in, they already had hidden weapons, inside of the clothes they were wearing. And of course, that explains what happened. But I think that, like I said, since it is being alleged that they are rustlers, they probably are coming in to free some of their members that may have been arrested and kept in the facility.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Daskes. I'm just wondering, we're getting pressed for time now. Let me still take advantage of our connection to Kaduna. My Lord Honorable Justice Bello, the point is one that oftentimes hasn't been given sufficient consideration in my humble submission, namely that prisons are on the exclusive legislative list and therefore a federal business. But prisons accommodate persons who commit both federal and state offenses. And we have seen an increase in our population. We have also seen a rise in the number of offenses created by state legislatures and national legislatures. I don't know how many state prison facilities are there in the country, but wherever it is, if you commit an offense and then there is a custodial sentence, you go to a prison facility run by the federal government. Its own budget is limited. The other day at the National Assembly, I think there was some uproar about the feeding allowance from 750 naira. They said it was 750 naira. The question was, look, can that feed any adult? Why don't you take it up to 1,000? The time, is it not ripe, my lord, to say, look, let's take a look again at our prisons? Shouldn't we have prisons on the concurrent list so that states can also build their own custodial centers and run them?
Much for this question. It's an advocacy which has been running for quite some time now. Not only that, the need for the police force too to be on the concurrent list so that states will have their own police for the purpose of state policing. Well, one needn't have to go into history as to why decentralization, but just concisely to say the experience of the 50s where the prisons and the police were being abused politically, and meaning that opponents within the political balance were without justifiable cause sent to prisons and sometimes to eternity, so to speak. And so with the police, that is Native Authority Police, and many other ills surrounding those institutions, which led to the decision to centralize and control in terms of damage control to the BRS minimally, if not eradicating in totality. But with the turn of events now, as we are seeing and we are going through, one may lend credence to what you have just said. And the earlier we have that, the better. Even as we know, we are likely to revert back to what was happening in the 50s in terms of abuses, politically motivated arrest, politically motivated protracted detention, and so forth and so on. But with the enormity of the challenges that we have now, it is very crucial that that is done, because when you have police that are coming from the immediate vicinity, they understand the terrain better. They can go into nooks and crannies, and they may know, they may even know those substantially, those that are around, and it may perhaps enhance checking of crimes at the early stage to nip in the bud. So I would subscribe to that.
Okay, thank you, Justice Bello. Let me come back here and put my question to, I'd like to start with Ruth Olofin, and I'm looking at how we can make the correctional centers now less attractive, for want of words, to attacks. And earlier on we've talked about decongesting. But I know that the issue of death penalty and, putting those on death row, applying the law of death penalty on those on death row has been condemned or by rights groups, and most state governors also, state executive also, are reluctant to put pen to paper on that part of the law, which is not unconstitutional for us. So how do we, or what do we do to those inmates who are on the death row for over 10 to 20 years, for instance?
All right, thank you so much. My suggestion would be that we commute those on death row to life imprisonment. That would be my suggestion, because...
How does that decongest the prisons?
Well, so, if you... That is it. But if you look at it from a rights perspective, we come from the angle that you can't take human life. At least you can't take him, because you didn't create the person in the first place. We understand that, yes, these crimes will happen, capital offenses and all of that. But the actual deed of, signing off somebody's death is still a very contentious issue. And there are discussions that say that even for the governors, they see it as moral, cultural, religious issues, that they didn't create these persons and they cannot just sign it. And that is why you see that they're abdicating their duties back to the judiciary. I think that is to, one of the discussions that has not held really is to look at this angle in terms of non-custodial measures. we tend to, on our correctional system, tend to be more punitive. You know, go in there, you are punished and all of that. But how are we also looking at the other perspective around non-custodian? For instance, you want to do patrol. I mean, we watch American movies and we see that, you know, you have served your term, you have maybe a year or so, you're put on parole, and a police officer or an officer is, you know, put in your care, and they are monitoring that process.
Yeah.
If you're following that angle, tendency for me is that you're picking out the numbers, you know, gradually out of the prison system. Our justice system has been so shaped in such a manner that the process has to be slow. Even with the very innovative laws that you've had around the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, you don't see that actively working in terms of speedy trials and all of that. But back to the question that you asked, for me, I think I'll just leave it that death penalty should just be commuted to life imprisonment.
The life imprisonment, but Kingsley says that how does that decongest the prisons? Because we are talking about getting the prisons, you know, decongested.
Well, until recently, we see that the prison is supposed to house just convicts. The 2019 Custodial Services Act makes part of what the mandate of the corrections is to house pretrial detainees. So I'll look at it from the perspective or the angle of the entry point. How do you get these persons? It's either they are convicted or they are remanded by a court. So it's not just the prisons that has the corrections that has a role to play in this line. It's also the judiciary, the prosecuting agencies. So why don't we look at, instead of taking everybody who is suspected or charged for an offense, why don't instead of taking them to the prison, why don't we look at other diversionary measures? For instance, why don't the states, the Honorable Justice Bello mentioned about what the state governments are not doing. This is an opportunity. If you don't have that mandate to, these people are charged mostly on the federal, on the state laws. So why don't you, for instance, empower your state judiciary to do a kind of pretrial system where not everybody, so when someone is charged for a minor offense, you don't take that person to the prisons. You have like a holding area where that person waits and perfects his bail conditions, and then he goes and then he comes back to face his trial instead of taking everybody to the custodial center.
Right.
And also the overcriminalization of minor offenses. So everybody is charged, and it goes down to the point of the charging, which is from the prosecuting agencies, from the charging and
okay, Mahmoud, thanks a lot. That's an issue. I don't know whether he has the data. Dr. Daskes in Jos, tell us, do we have a sense of the percentage of rearrest of escapees from prison facilities during the jailbreak or during an attack? This year, we've had a fourth one. Last year, for instance, during the NSAS protest, 1,800 prisoners escaped from the two prison facilities in Benin City. Do we have a sense of the numbers of rearrest, or those gentlemen are now on the loose?
I think that for jailbreaks that took place in other states, it's very difficult now to have a percentage of rearrested inmates, as the case may be, and so the truth is that for some of these jailbreaks, especially the ones that took place in Benin, in Niger and other places, a significant number of the inmates, of course, were let loose, and the information we are getting is that not many of them were rearrested. But the situation in Jos, of course, is slightly different because not many of them escaped. But you actually discover that the arrest is not very significant, and that sends a signal to the wider society to, of course, be more vigilant and be security conscious, knowing fully well that these people, he talked about recidivism, that it's an opportunity for them to go on rampage again.
Dr. Gulen Daskes, criminologist and lecturer, Department of Sociology, University of Jos. We really, really appreciate your contribution to Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you very much. And let me also appreciate former Chief Judge of the FCT, Justice Ishak Bello, who is also the Chairman, Presidential Committee on Corrections, Reforms and Decongestion. Justice Bello, thank you very much, and do have a pleasant day. Ruth Olofin is Acting Executive Director, Clean Foundation. Always a pleasure to have you, madam. Thank you very much. So much. And Mahmoud Yusuf, Legal Practitioner and Programs Manager, Network of University Legal Aid Institutions, New Life. Thank you very much for your perspective.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it on Good Morning Nigeria. But just before we go, let's quickly take a look at development in the sports world.